Hi and welcome. In this video, we're going to look at the labor market, which is the chapter 6 of the macroeconomics 2 module. So just to have a brief recap, in the first term, we covered the first 5 chapters of the book. So in chapter 1, we took a macroeconomic tour of the world. In chapter 2, we look at the 3 key macroeconomic variables, which is output, unemployment, and inflation. While in chapter 3, we explored the equilibrium in the goods market, and we look at the equilibrium in the financial market in chapter 4. And chapter 5 look at the goods market and the financial market together. And we developed a model known as the ISLM model. So the remaining part of the book remains of chapter 6, 7, and 8. So in chapter 7, we're going to look at all the markets together and develop the AS and the AD model. While in chapter 7, we're going to look at the Phillips curve, which looks at the relationship between unemployment and inflation. So chapter 6 looks at the equilibrium in the labor market. So to get the hang of things, think about what happens when the firms respond to an increase in demand by increasing production. So in this regard, a number of events or a sequence of events is more likely to happen, especially from the labor market point of view. So higher production will lead to higher employment. So higher employment leads to lower unemployment, and the lower unemployment leads to higher wages. So the higher wages basically increases the production cost, leading to firms to increase prices. The higher prices lead to workers to ask for even higher wages, and those higher wages are basically going to lead to a further increase in price, and so on and so forth. This sequence of events have been ignored until now. In fact, by assuming a constant price level in the ISLM model, we assume that firms were willing to supply any amount of output at any given price level. The assumption was acceptable so long as our focus was in the short run. However, we now turn in the medium run and must drop this assumption or relax it. And we must explore how prices and wages adjust over time. And also how does that adjustment in turn affect output. So currently the labor market in South Africa looks this way. Of the 57 million people in our population, 38.5 of them are regarded as non-institutionalized civilian population. And 23.1 million of those are part of the labor force. And in the labor force, we've got 16.3 million employed, and the 6.7 is unemployed. So this labor market is characterized by what we call large flows. So what can cause large flow of workers? So large flow of workers are basically caused by two main factors. One, many separations and many hires. Two is the sclerotic labor market. So to understand the flow of workers, let's use unemployment rate and what it implies to individuals. Take an airport full of passengers, for instance. This airport can be crowded because many planes are coming and going, and many passengers are quickly moving in and out. Or alternatively, it may be because bad weather is delaying flights and passengers are stranded waiting for the weather to improve. In both cases, the number of passengers will be high, but the situation 2, passengers are less happy than in situation 1. So in the same way, unemployment rate may reflect two very similar realities. So one, an active labor market. An active labor market is one with many separation and many hires. That is, workers entering and exiting the unemployment pool. 2, a sclerotic labor market, where there's a few separations and few hires and stagnant unemployment pool. So in most cases, we basically, as economics, vow for the active labor market, where there are many separations and many hires, because in that way, it shows that our our economy is active. So what causes this unemployment? In order to shed light on the causes of unemployment and deal with these more precisely, we economists separate unemployment into the following types. So one, frictional unemployment. This exists in any economy due to people being in the process of moving from one job to another. So in this case, we can agree that this shows separations and hires. So basically, this is a type of unemployment that every economy is looking for because it shows activity. Two, we've got cyclical unemployment, which occurs during a period of slow economic growth or during a period of economic contraction. So when the economy is booming, we see people being employed. However, when the economy is at recession, people lose their jobs. And this type of unemployment is called cyclical unemployment. We also have the structural unemployment. This is the unemployment resulting from industrial reorganization, typically due to technological change rather than fluctuations in supply and demand. So lastly, we have the seasonal unemployment. So this type of unemployment occurs when people are unemployed at a particular time of the year when demand for labor is lower than usual. So usually this type of unemployment is found in sectors such as the agricultural sector. Okay, so a review of what we've done so far. We've taken a tour of the South African labor market and basically went over types of unemployment that we are by this time used to. So what we're going to do in the next sections is basically look at the wage determination as well as price determination. So firstly, we're going to look at the wage determination and at the relationship between wages and unemployment thereafter. So usually wages are set in many ways. However, in South Africa, we use a method known as the collective bargaining. So collective bargaining basically means the bargaining between firms and unions. In South Africa, we measure the activity of trade unions by a measure known as the trade union density. So our trade union density in South Africa is basically 30%. This means that 1 in 3 workers is basically represented by a union. It, however, differs by sectors. For instance, the trade union density in the mining sector is sitting at 78%, which is the sector with the highest number of union workers. However, in other sectors such as construction, only 12% of the workers are represented by unions. In these sectors, wages are either set by the employer or by bargaining between the employer and individual employees. So in these sectors, skills play a very crucial role. So the more the skill, the more the bargaining power. And those who are unskilled are less likely to have any bargaining power at all. So wages for jobs that are entry level, such as McDonald's, are usually on take it or leave it basis. So for footballers, for instance, and CEOs, they can negotiate a lot more because of their skill and the scarcity of their skill. There are also differences across countries. While collective bargaining plays an important role in South Africa, in Japan and most European countries, only 3% of the formal working force belongs to unions. Negotiations usually takes place at business level or industry level and or at a national level. Well, despite the differences across workers and across countries, and although institutional differences influence wage determination, there are common forces at work in all countries that we can use to develop a general theory of wage determination. So, 2 sets of forces are pointed out at this point. So 1, workers are typically paid more than their reservation wage. So reservation wage is the wage that would make a worker indifferent between working or being unemployed. 2, wages typically depend on labor market conditions. That is, the lower the unemployment rate, the higher the wages, because higher unemployment rate basically means that there are more people in the market and workers can easily be replaceable. So economists use two broad lines to explain this fact. So 1, workers still have some bargaining power even if the collective bargaining is absent, which they can use to get wages above the reservation wage. So number 2, firms may want to pay wages higher than the reservation wage. So in economics, this is known as efficiency wages. Let's explore this bargaining power narrative even further. So a worker's bargaining power depends on 2 factors. So 1, the nature of the job, and 2, the labor market conditions. So the nature of the job, that is, how costly will it be to replace the worker? So the costly it is to replace the worker, the higher the bargaining power. For instance, replacing a McDonald's worker is not costly. Therefore, there's less time required to teach the skill of a person who works at McDonald's, for instance. And the number of applications that are willing to fill up the job is very high. This worker has less bargaining power and therefore cannot ask for a higher wage. If they do, they can be laid off or replaced at a minimum cost. However, highly skilled workers are difficult and costly to replace, giving them a higher power or a higher bargaining power. The second point on labor market conditions basically entails that when unemployment is low, it is difficult for firms to find acceptable replacement workers. At the same time, it is easy for workers to find a new job. This then gives workers a stronger bargaining power and a bargaining position and can obtain a higher wage using this power. And also the opposite is true, suggesting that higher unemployment rate means that workers are easily replaceable and have a harder chance to find a new job, which basically gives them a weaker bargaining power. Workers can take or accept a lower wage in this regard because of higher unemployment rate and a lot of people who are willing to take the job. The second point we looked at was the efficiency wages. So economists call theories that link productivity or the efficiency of workers to the wage they are paid efficiency wage theories. So if firms want their workers to produce at a productive rate, they can achieve this by paying these workers higher wages. For instance, it takes a while for workers to master a job, and firms will require workers to stay for some time in their firm. So when these workers are paid reservation wages, there will be indifference between staying and leaving, and therefore there will be many people leaving, increasing the turnover of labor force in the firm. So the turnover is basically the rate at which workers quit their jobs. So with reservation wages, we're likely to see an increase in people quitting, and this will increase the turnover, and it will be high. So paying wages above the reservation wage makes it more attractive for workers to stay. This then decreases the turnover and increases productivity. This is simply because workers will feel good about their work, and promoting good working leads to productivity, and output will increase. However, just like bargaining power, efficiency wages theories also depend on the nature of the job and on the labor market conditions. So in essence, the efficiency wage theory suggests that firms should pay more to their workers to increase productivity. And this also depends on the labor market conditions. So firms pay higher wages mostly if unemployment is low. So if we look at the focus box in page 141, which stipulates on how Henry Ford, the founder of the car manufacturer firm, Ford, basically used efficiency wages to increase productivity in his firm. So this is where we're going to end the first part of our video, and we'll take it from here on the next video.